I thought the season was over. I thought this summer was going to be simple. Just get a few players, sell a few, move on. Oh, man. All right. Welcome back, everyone, to the American Blues Podcast. This is your host, Terry Lee. Chelsea. My goodness. Not even just a few days after the end of the season, we get just bombshell after bombshell. And I've been pretty quiet. I've been giving it time to sit in my head, because when I first found out the news that Pochettino was sacked, I was at work. I was getting absolutely destroyed at work. My wife texted me, sent me the news, and I went, nah, I can't. Not right now. I don't have the brain power to handle this. And then I've been sick for the past couple of days, so I've been sitting on it, thinking about it. Finally, it's 5 a.m. right now. I've been up since 4 because I just woke up and I could not get these thoughts out of my head. I just kept thinking about the club, these decisions, the future. And I was like, you know what? Screw it. I'm awake. I need to go record. I'm finally ready. So let's talk about all the insane stuff that's happened the last few days. Of course, where do we start but with Pochettino left by mutual consent on good terms. Okay, my initial reaction, I think like almost every Chelsea fan, was, what the hell? Like, we were finally doing well. It seems like Pochettino was finally getting the team to understand how he wanted to play. We were moving up, and that was that. So I was in complete shock. I didn't agree with it. I was angry, upset. Man, I think I went through all the stages of grief over this the last few days. But I've come to accept it, because I try not to be a reactionary fan, and I think if you are trying to run a successful club, which that's what I want. I want Chelsea to be a successful club again. I want us to not only be challenging for top 4, but challenging for titles, which we haven't consistently done, man, since our last Premier League with Conte. Like, we just haven't really been there. And you could even argue that even then, the Roman model of constantly firing managers just wasn't working out that well. We had the beginnings of City's dominance of an extremely well-run club, and we were starting to fall behind. We probably weren't buying the players that made the most sense. Our team was just so chopped up with ideas of different managers and profiles of players. Yeah, so we were starting to not be able to compete at the top anymore, and we just haven't been for almost a decade. Probably not a decade, but close to it. So with this decision, I think the same truth applies, which is, if you have a new manager and they lose, let's say, 5 or 6 games in a row, you can't just instantly go, oh, this manager's not it. They need to be fired or they need to be sacked. Like, you can't make such reactionary decisions if you're trying to run a club. You have to look at everything on a whole. You have to look at it on a year by year. And then if you're a sporting director, your job is really to look at the club in a 3, 4, 5 year window and see, what can I do in this window? And here are our goals. So I get it. If you look at the season overall, I would say for 90% of the season, if you just discount all the games from February on, from when we lost 5-0 to Arsenal, we were not good. Like, we had no patterns of play. It took, I think, 8 months until we started to see some patterns of play. And the games that we were tying and losing to bottom league teams, like the Sheffield United draw, unacceptable. The 4-2 loss to Wolves, unacceptable. The way we lost the final against Liverpool's C team, unacceptable. And the chance after chance after chance that we gave up against City in the semifinal in the FA Cup, also unacceptable. Like, they're just not good enough. They're just not good enough. And for as good as the season ended, there were so many negatives throughout the season that I think it makes sense. I think it makes sense if you also look at it from a overall, like, club structure standpoint, right? Like, look at the things between the lines, right? Pochettino for several months has been saying that, it's not just the club's decision, that he doesn't want to stay. He was clearly getting annoyed during press conferences with the very public flirting that the club had been doing with other managers, and the fact that nobody in the club above him was defending him publicly. And then in the end, he started to say stuff like, oh, hey, it's not just the club's decisions. I can decide to leave too, and it's not the end of the world, and it's perfectly fine. So it's pretty clear. I think over the last few days, more and more rumors have come out that, maybe Bully. Here's another issue is that we have a dysfunctional hierarchy, right? We have two owners with their own opinions, and then we have two sporting directors, each with their own opinions. So we have four decision makers on top of a manager who are each trying to pull the club in different directions, or maybe they're trying to pull in the same direction and one guy's not part of it. So it doesn't make sense. There's too many cooks in the kitchen, and whenever that happens, the team suffers. Just look at United. There's always been too many cooks in the kitchen, and the team has suffered ever since Sir Alex has left. And then some of the rumors are just strange. Like Bully met with Pochettino on his own and had a good dinner together. And Pochettino even spoke publicly about that. And he was saying, hey, if you invite me out to dinner, like, why would you sack me after? It doesn't make sense, right? You're right. It does make sense. But then Pochettino had a separate meeting with Iqbali, Stewart, and Winstanley. And obviously that one didn't go as well. And they decided to part ways a day after. So clearly there's a big hole in decision making, or just big difference in decision making. I don't know why the media keeps pushing Bully as like the front face of Chelsea when it's clear that he really hasn't been the front face for over a year now. It's really been Iqbali who's generally at every game, and then Stewart and Winstanley who are always at the games, right? It's been those three that are running the club. I think it's just probably easier to put like this American owner who doesn't know anything as the face of the club, sure, but the club is still majority or owned by Clear Lake, and Clear Lake's representative at the club is Iqbali, and then there's some other guy that I don't remember the name, but it's mainly Iqbali. So I think most of these decisions you have to look at it from that scope of view, which is Bully's the public face in America for it, but really the decision making has been from Paul Winstanley, Stewart, and Iqbali, and they clearly just did not believe in Pochettino, which I think if you look at the season overall, fine, I can buy that. It makes sense. Separate thing is that this team really isn't built for Pochettino's style. His style is a high press, high energy, kind of like Ten Hag, like transitional, the world's best transitional team, whatever the hell that means. Which is why he puts so much emphasis on players like Jackson and Conor Gallagher, Cucurella, high energy players, when clearly, very clearly, the club has been trying to sell Gallagher for almost 2 years now, and they want to let go of Chelesa because what they want is to build a team with the players they've bought and they've scouted while selling Chelsea youngsters for pure profit. Now, I don't agree with that. Your heart of your team is your academy. Like, we have to have players from the academy who care about the club, not just mercenaries that we've bought, because that is the heart and soul of the club. Like, those are the players that the supporters connect to. And you saw the reaction from the fans on the last day where they put up the giant banner for Gallagher, and you could see how much that meant to Gallagher and his family. Like, those are players the club need to get behind. Even if they're not world superstars, even if Conor Gallagher is never going to be the best 10 or best midfield in the country, it doesn't matter. Like, his heart and his passion for the team, that is something that the club cannot quantify. And to sell that off as just like a piece of meat for our profit so we can keep buying new teenagers who are supposedly the next wonder kid, it's saddening because it feels like they're ripping out the heart and soul of the team, and the fans can feel that too. And same thing with Chalobah. Like, what an incredible defender from our academy who's always been dependable, who's gone through injuries and come back stronger. Like that's just beyond disappointing. And like John Terry said too, when he heard the news, like, he hopes the club doesn't sell or buy any new players until we found a new manager. And I agree. Like clearly these sporting directors have a vision for the club that's based on the players they buy. It doesn't really even seem like they care all that much who the manager is, as long as the manager listens to them. That's what they really mean when they say they need a manager to fit into the club hierarchy. That means, understand there is a hierarchy above you. There's 2 guys above you and 2 owners above you, and they will call the shots. We will pick the players. You just do what we tell you with these toys and don't complain, which is probably why they are so gung-ho about getting a young manager, because young managers are, up and coming in the game. They don't have as much saying power. They don't have as much experience, and they don't have as many opinions probably. So they're more likely to just go along with the club and say, yes, sir, yes, sir, yes, sir. I will do this, sir. I will never complain. I will never ask for players, and I will just do the best I can with the players you give me. And then we will sell players for profit, and you will make your investors happy. Like that I think is the model that the club is truly after. But I hate that. I hate the future that entails. But let's get off the negative train for a bit and just let's try to pretend. Let's just pretend that these guys have the club's best interest in heart and that they want to win. Let's just go from there. Okay? Because they care about their jobs too. So I would say this manager appointment, if this goes wrong, the sporting directors have to go. They've had more than 2 years. That's half of the, I would say, normal lifespan of a sporting director to see their vision come true. They've had about half of it to enact their vision, right? But if they get this manager wrong, after we already tried this with Potter and failed spectacularly and gave us the worst, most disgusting club season I have ever seen, that I think any Chelsea fan has seen, young or old, it doesn't matter. Like historically bad season last year. We already tried that once. But hey, guess what? Let's try it again with another new manager and see if it works this time. So I think this is our last chance. I truly do. I think if the owners stick by them, if we fail again, then I have absolutely no hope left for the club until the ownership changes in a decade. Who knows where we will be by then. But okay, so let's just pretend like we know what we're doing. Then fine. The players that we have on the team are fit for a possession-heavy team that wants to control the game in every phase and not just high press, try to catch teams on transition. Fine. We have players like Chelesa, who's an incredible progressive. We have players like Chelesa, who's an incredible progressive passer and defender of the ball. And he's an absolute engine in the midfield. Enzo is a player that only makes sense on a team that wants to play possession. He's not super fast. He's not super athletic. But man, can he control the ball, and man, can he pass short, medium, long. That is his specialty. And even the defenders that we bought, Disasi, Badiashile, these are not defenders really known for their speed all that much. They're known for their height, their strength, maybe their passing ability. Like Disasi is just kind of an outlier. I have no idea why we bought him, because he doesn't really fit into a possession model either. He just doesn't really fit into this team in any way, because he's slow, he's not good at passing, and all he really has is passion and strength. That's it. Maybe they thought getting one strong defender and one tall, faster defender in Badiashile would work, and they played together, but clearly that has not worked. But fine. You know what? Let's say that's the kind of manager we want. Then, okay, sure. Then let's look at our manager choices that are all up in the rumor sphere right now. Number 1, Kieran McKenna, manager of Ipswich. I don't know anything about Ipswich. This is my mindset when I heard about Ipswich, which was, I don't know if you guys saw a movie that came out about a decade ago called Stardust. I absolutely love the movie. I think it's fantastic. If you haven't seen it, you should go see it. It's a really fun time. But the main character is basically in love with this girl who's really, really attractive, Sienna Miller, but also really dumb and just has she's just kind of a bitch. Like, you don't really like her. You're not supposed to like her as a character. She's very small-minded. And of course, she's really in love with Henry Cavill, because why not? It's Henry Cavill. It makes sense. But Henry Cavill's rich and the main character isn't. And her defense of Henry Cavill to the main character when he's trying to, woo her, is that, hey, Henry Cavill is going all the way to Ipswich to get me a ring. And the main character goes, Ipswich? What? What are you talking about? That's a tiny little town. I want to take you to London. I want to get you this star that nobody can get. And that's how I feel. I feel like we're Sienna Miller. We are a pretty club, but we are empty and dumb when you actually talk to us. And that is Chelsea. As simply as I can put it, we are a London club. We have our history. We are a shiny, shiny toy from the outside that any manager would want to do, even if it's a poison chalice. managers will always want to manage Chelsea because of the location, the glamour, and what it means in the Premier League and the financial backing that we have. Okay, but then once you get to the club and you talk to the people in charge, you realize, oh shit, you guys have no idea what you're doing. And this club makes no sense. The recruitment makes no sense. We're not really even building a team. We're just collecting a bunch of youngsters and seeing that they can play together. That's how I feel. And that's how I feel about Ipswich. No offense to Ipswich. I'm sure you're great. I love an underdog story, and I think it's fantastic that they've had back-to-back promotions. Great. We will see how they really do in the Premier League this coming season. But for a manager of that caliber, who's so new, who's only had 2 years in senior management, for him to make that jump to Chelsea, like we saw what happened with Potter, and he was managing a Premier League club and a very well-run Premier League club at that point, right? And he came to Chelsea, and immediately you could tell the job was too big for him. He just did not have the personality. He didn't have the experience, and players can tell, right? How many players have you heard give interviews say they know they're as much as aware of how a manager is as the other way around, right? They know from day one if a manager is serious, if this is someone that can get behind, if they're willing to give 110% in training and on the pitch during game day for this manager. They know, and they knew Graham Potter was not it. And maybe Kieran McKenna is it, maybe he's not, but that is a huge risk to take. Like huge, especially when we finally are moving up on the Premier League ladder. Like we have a positive momentum. The last thing we want to do is to just crash and take us back down into mid-table hell. So that's my opinion on Kieran McKenna. I don't know anything about him. I've watched, actually 442 did a really good video breaking down Ipswich's style play. Sure, on paper it makes sense, but you know what? On paper, a lot of managers make sense because everybody wants to play this sexy new Pep style of possession in and out of attack and defense, and then with a back line that can switch between 4 and 3 depending on defense or attack, and in a very fluid up front. Like all managers, I would say today who are up and coming want to play that way, and they can play that way on paper, but the sport is never played on paper. You have to translate it into real players across real games in a grueling season against 19 other managers who are also equally as good or better than you, right? That's the part that's tough. And I'm sorry, the championship level players are just not the same as Premier League level players. Like I watched highlights of Ipswich, and there are really good compilations of them building up from the back. But if you look closely, they're not getting pressed to hell like they would be if they were playing against Arsenal or City, or really most other Premier League teams. Like they are giving way too much time on the ball to pick out the next pass. Like they're, I would say, a solid pace behind Premier League clubs, and that little extra yard of pressing, of putting you under pressure, giving you that less time to make a decision, that is a huge difference in professional play. Huge difference. So, like I said, that's how I feel about McKenna. And that's how I feel about Enzo Maresca of Leicester City. Leicester City went down. They're probably going to come back up, whatever. They have a brand new manager. Same thing. They played in championship. Why are we going after championship managers? I want Premier League proven. Like oh my God, like we're trying to not just be top 4, we're trying to hunt for the league. Pep is leaving after next season. Like there's going to be a hole at the top of the Premier League, and I want to fill that, right? I want this team to fill that hole. That came out weird, but don't worry about it. But yeah, that's where I want to be. I don't want to keep going up and down in mid-table shit territory and keep experimenting with new managers to see which one sticks. Like that's not a good viable plan, and that destroys any cohesion within the team. And we have young players, and they need cohesion. They need a continuity of ideas so they can grow to become great players, right? Now, same thing could be said for Hunes of Stuttgart or Michel of Girona. Both of these teams have had great seasons, and I'm a little bit more partial to Hoeneß just because of no reason other than the fact that he's a German manager. I love German manager. I don't know why. It's probably because I wanted Chelsea to get Klopp before Liverpool did 9 years ago, and I've always appreciated the style of play and just the big personality. Yeah, the big personality that Klopp had. And whenever I see a German manager like Flick, like Nagelsmann, it just reminds me of that huge personality that is able to run a top tier club. I like Hoeneß, but pretty much every single rumor has that Hoeneß wants to stay. I mean, he turned down Bayern, for God's sakes. Like, what German manager turns down Bayern? Nobody, apart from him and Alonso, who Alonso's not even German, and he turned down Bayern. You know, I think the absolute pipe dream manager would be Xabi Alonso, but we're never going to get him. Don't worry. It will never happen on this planet. He is going to Real Madrid next season when Ancelotti inevitably retires or finally leaves. And that's very clearly what he's being groomed for. So I would say, yeah, Stuttgart, Hoeneß, not a real option. And then, of course, there's Ruben Amorim, which from what I've seen of him, I like him. And that's purely because of Jose Mourinho. You know, Mourinho is why I fell in love with the team and the sport. He's still my favorite manager of all time. I understand he as a person and as a manager is outdated now. The game has left him behind, and that's fine. But whenever I see Ruben Amorim, a young and upcoming Portuguese manager with a big personality, it reminds me of Jose Mourinho. So for that reason alone, sure, I'd be interested to see what he could do with this team. And he's done a great job at Sporting. It doesn't seem like he's leaving. You know, he had some like flirting with West Ham. There was all these BS rumors where maybe West Ham flew him in and then maybe we flew him in, and then he publicly apologized for even interviewing with West Ham and said he's staying. So I don't think he's a realistic option. And then lastly, Thomas Frank. My goodness, like this is the stuff that pisses me off, right? This is where I look at the sporting directors and I go, do you actually know what you're doing? Because your own short list doesn't match what you're publicly saying, right? Publicly, they're saying we want a progressive manager with possession-based football. Great. Is that Thomas Frank? Absolutely not, right? Brentford are the team that likes to sit back, hit you on the counter, hit you on set pieces. Our team is not built for that. None of our team is. Like, Zero. The only player who would have enjoyed sitting back and defending and hitting on set pieces was Thiago Silva, and now he's gone. So no, this makes no sense. I swear to God, if we end up going for Thomas Frank, and I have nothing against Thomas Frank as a person, I actually think he seems like a great guy. He seems like a good manager, but it makes no sense. Right. And this is my biggest issue, is that we are doing things that make no sense. We are gambling the future of the club. We are selling our own assets to ourselves just to cover our own mistakes. None of this sits well as a fan. It's laughable to watch if you're not a fan. Like, we are the laughing stock, and we continue to be the laughing stock of Europe, spending the most and getting nothing. Just, man, but like I said, I need to stay positive for my own sanity because I love this team. I love this club. I will always be there as a fan. I will always watch these games, whether we are top of the table, mid-table, bottom table. Even if we are relegated, I would say, you know what? This blows. But let's see what the championship is like. That's the kind of fan I am. So whoever comes in, I will back them. I will be excited for preseason. I will be excited to see what they can do. But my goodness, these sporting directors and owners, God, please make a decision that just makes sense. Please. So I'm sure within a day or so, this video will no longer become relevant because we've either been linked with new managers or we've already hired someone, and then I'll have to mentally deal with that. But whatever. For now, these are my thoughts. Let me know what you think about the Pochettino sacking. I know what the majority of fans think, which is what I thought, which is what the hell just happened. I don't agree. But let me know what you think of the coming managers, because I don't know anything about them. Who does? All right. Other than professional football watchers who watch multiple leagues and analyze this every day. Like, who else would know anything about these managers? I sure don't. So let me know what you think, and I will see you whenever. after the next huge news, probably in another day or so. Peace.